Krishna and welcome to all our attendees both on Facebook and on our Zoom webinar. Thank you all for joining us for the 11th Annual BBT Africa Conference. For those of you who joined our earlier sessions, you would have heard the inspirational talks on the importance of connecting to Srila Prabhupada through his books, as well as the importance of distributing this transcendental knowledge as far and wide as possible. One of the key aspects to book distribution is actually embedded within our own personal spiritual practice, so our own sadhana. And in this session, we are very privileged to have the fortune to hear from a very special devotee, a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, Her Grace Pranada Devi Dasi. I will be interviewing her on her award-winning book, Wise Love, which actually offers the reader so many gems which can be applied to one's spiritual practice. And the book is due to be published by BBT Africa later this year. But before we get into that, I'd like to give you some background information on Her Grace Pranada Devi Dasi. Pranada Devi Dasi joined the Los Angeles Temple at 17 years old, and Srila Prabhupada accepted her as his disciple in 1976. She distributed books and served the Back to Godhead magazine in various roles for nearly 30 years. She was a board member of the ISKCON Foundation, Gita Nagari Press, the Alachua Temple, and the Alachua Learning Center. As the Krishna Community Fund president, she spearheaded the building of the ISKCON Alachua Temple. She was the co-coordinator of the BBT Specials Projects Division for 5 years and launched Krishna.com with 3 other devotees in 2000. In the 1990s, she published the quarterly newsletter Priti Lakshana to educate devotees about the role of women in ISKCON and to provide an avenue for devotees to communicate with the GBC about other topics of concern. She founded Adopted Child that served to place devotee children from homes who could not care for them into devotee homes. With Sudharma Dasi and others, she helped to establish the ISKCON Women's Ministry, now known as the Vaishnavi Ministry. And to have the facility to offer these volunteer services, as an entrepreneur, Pranada established and managed 2 successful businesses to support her family. She is a mother and a grandmother and the author of the award-winning Wise Love, Bhakti and the Search for the Soul of Consciousness. Her second book, Bhakti Shakti, Goddess of Fortune Love, will be released in 2021 by Mandala Publishing. She's a featured speaker in the film of Women of Bhakti, and her writing has appeared in numerous online print publications for outside audiences. She lives with her husband, Nagaraj Prabhu, in their home in Alachua and is working on her 3rd book. Hare Krishna, Pranada Prabhu, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me at this special event, Tirumala. Hare Krishna.
So our first question is, what inspired you to write this book, Wise Love?
I was working at the time on Krishna.com. We had just launched the website, which was a novel addition to preaching in ISKCON. We were thinking very deeply about how to reach people with the message of bhakti in a relevant, relatable way. And in my discussions with people, it seemed that it would be very helpful if we had bridge books or introductory books to Srila Prabhupada's books. And I found people were having difficulty entering into the Bhagavatam, what to speak of even the Bhagavad Gita at times. And of course, the little books are really helpful and they're easy to distribute, they're a quick read. But even that, sometimes people were trying to understand, what's the overview here? I'm getting these points, but what's the overview? So at the time, I thought to bring to the BBT trustees an idea, which at the time I called the Bhakti Campaign. This was in 2002. And the idea was we would seek writers within our movement who were capable of writing bridge or introductory books, and then put them on a speaking circuit, where you would have speaking engagements and promote the book and get some notoriety for the authors and the books. And at the same time, we could do kirtan circuits. So we would do kirtan, presentation, books, Prabhupada's books like this. And the BBT trustees were very excited about that idea, as a matter of fact. So on the spot, they formed what was called BBT Special Projects. And the BBT Special Projects was deputed to find the authors that could write these introductory or bridge books, and also to develop some marketing ideas, because we felt that as a publishing house, it would be helpful if we had other distribution avenues beside the devotee book bag or the tables, which were absolutely crucial. But if we could expand our reach, that would be very good. And of course, we tried to expand our reach on Krishna.com. That was one of the main reasons why we launched and established Krishna.com, which was very successful. So this was developed, and I spent 5 years co-managing that special projects with Gopal Bhatta Prabhu, and for different reasons, we weren't able to produce the books that we had envisioned, which was heartbreaking, actually. So I resigned from that service. At the time, I was quite ill, and I had this little voice saying, "You should write, you should write." And I said, no, thank you. I'm not a writer. I don't know how to write. We just spent 5 years looking for an appropriate person to write. I can't write. No, thank you. But this little voice kept on saying, and it wasn't from inside my head. It was clearly, I felt anyway, clearly something coming from beyond me, and it was a request to do the service. But that was very bewildering. And after about 6 months, maybe 9 months, I thought, well, if I'm going to write, I'm going to have to learn how to write. So I spent some months taking online courses, and then I found a local writers group that would meet once a week, and you would bring in your writing and have it critiqued by the intelligentsia of this area, say professors, published authors, established authors even. So I was bringing in my little Krishna conscious pieces to this writing group, and not all of them were all that impressed, but I had to learn how to write, so I was learning how to write, and I did meet through that group one person, and I just had this connection with her, and I thought, I think she could really help me. So I went up to her and I said, "Could you mentor me in writing?" And she said, yes. And so she spent some years mentoring me in writing. But she couldn't help me with the vocabulary. What I found is that when we speak to people and we're trying to reach them with making a heart connection, if we're using terms that are very insular to our society, to our ISKCON society, it's like they don't quite get it. And as I was writing, I was realizing I can't use Christian terms because they're so weighted. They already have their definition, and we don't want to beat them over the head with dogma. So I was trying to find an expression to come out with. Of course, I didn't see the book Wise Love. I just had this idea that it would be important to do a bridge book. And I then met one Vaishnava who, in his classes, the lights went off, and I went, oh my gosh, yes, this is the vocabulary we need to be able to speak to people in a broad way. So Wise Love is a very, very long development from a seed idea that went into an actual service, but that didn't happen, then learning how to write, and then hearing from this Vaishnava, I saw this idea for Wise Love as a concise overview of our philosophy that would be condensed, but you get a whole view of what our theology and philosophy is. not just a piece of it here and a piece of it here, but a broad one. So that's the long story of where that inspiration came from. It was a long time coming and some pushing from Krishna.
So why the title Wise Love? What does it mean?
Well, wise means wisdom and love means heart. So we have head and heart, and we need to use both in our approach to Krishna. And we need reason, we need logic. More importantly, we need Shastra. We need Shastra guidance so that our emotions are not just sentiment or material emotions. But we must, as a spirit beings, the self is a feeling self. We are feeling people eternally, not just as human beings. And so we need to know what is real love and how to express real love. And of course, wise love, I'm trying to get at that bhakti is rooted in Vedanta, and but it is very feeling. Our path is a very feeling path. We're trying to love Krishna. And so I'm trying to unpack this idea of divine love and how material love is unsatisfactory, it's not satisfying ultimately, and how it falls short to what the potential of the self is to love God. So wise love is really bhakti, Vedanta, right? We have bhakti and Vedanta. So wise love is bhakti, Vedanta. And when I was working with the phrase, I was thinking of it in terms of prem bhakti, that real love is exalted love of prem, uncontaminated, unmotivated, as we have Rupa Goswami's description of what bhakti is. So wise love is prem bhakti in the, if you want to take it to its highest definition.
Could you just elaborate a little bit on how wise love presents the essence of the practice of bhakti and its goals?
Sure. I had a vision when the book came to me. I had a vision that, well, first of all, I have a strong conviction that we as followers of Prabhupada, who have been gifted this knowledge, stand on very solid ground when we're talking to a broad audience if we speak about consciousness. In other words, the self is conscious, but it's also a unit of consciousness. And of course, Krishna is supreme consciousness. And if we dialogue about consciousness, which is known as the hard problem in the world of science, neuroscience, and philosophies of mind, we stand to really contribute to the world dialogue about what's important. And science doesn't have answers about consciousness, but we do have answers about consciousness. Not only do we have answers about consciousness and can describe how consciousness is functioning even within the body, and how the subtle body is a mirror of consciousness and it's our interface into the world. Not only can we dialogue about that, but even among religious traditions, nobody has such a robust understanding of the self as bhakti, as Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Well, other Vaishnavisms also, but especially the full extent of our potential in transcendence as spiritual beings. This is unheard of in the theological world. So I had this vision that I would speak about consciousness, the self, which I called the self, and I would lay out some of the more basic fundamentals so that people who are thinking individuals, who are intelligent, they can start considering, beyond, okay, we're not the body, but also we're not the mind. Hey, and we're not the emotions on top of that. And what is that unit of consciousness? So I spent a few chapters describing in more layman terms than I'm just speaking about now to the community of Vaishnavas about the self and its relationship with the body and the world, and how to interface as a self, which is an attempt to develop pure love. So that's the very basics, and then I get into, karma, and there's a whole section about mantra, the power of sound, praying kirtan, who Lord Chaitanya is, and then there's several chapters building up until we have a peek at who God is in terms of his psychology of being purchased by love, and a lover, a supreme lover himself.
And at one point in the book, you wrote something that really stuck out to me. And you wrote, "What you offer is limited only by your imagination and especially your courage." And so I was really touched by this, because that realization really touched me, because it is in fact our lack of courage that may hold us back in what we may offer the Lord. Would you be able to just share with us a little bit about that point regarding the role that courage plays in shaping our service to the Lord?
Yeah, well, I was speaking to not a devotee audience specifically in Wise Love. I'm thinking I'm speaking to people who have not committed themselves to Krishna and the path of bhakti. And when we're standing at that juncture where we know material life is not satisfying, we know there's something more, but it's really scary to let go. And of course it is for devotees too, until we have a direct experience of Krishna. But it's very difficult to let go of what's tangibly right in front of you. It's the hard reality, right? I think I'm the body, I feel this body, I have all these thoughts and emotions, and the field of the world is in front of me where I can engage. And you're telling me that I should, in many ways, turn from all of this and risk whatever happiness I think I might be able to gain for an eternal situation that I might not experience until after I die, say. So that takes courage. We could say another way of saying it also is faith. But we gain that courage through knowledge, through being guided with information from the seers, the sages that are giving us the Vedanta, giving us knowledge of consciousness which is not available in our daily interaction. And we all want knowledge. We want to know so that we can feel secure in what we're doing. So we have all this potential in Krishna consciousness, in practicing the path of bhakti, and all of it's laid out for us if we just simply take it. But it does take some courage. So I'm kind of like, it's almost like a challenge. Like some people do like a challenge and think, well, I've got courage, I'm going to try that. Or it could just be an acknowledgement that, yeah, it takes courage. And you can get courage in the association of others who are on the path and are trying.
Just by hearing you speak, one can pick up your enthusiasm and you've got a great sense of inspiration. Could you share with us a little bit about where you get that inspiration?
Well, as anyone, we get inspiration from the heart, from Krishna in the heart. But I found that while even obviously Krishna's in the heart before we take up the path of bhakti, I have found that really it is my practice of japa and my relationship with the holy name that guides my inspiration and guides me in service. I just, from chanting these many decades, are more and more convinced of not only the glory of the holy name, but the importance of our practice and taking it with so much sincerity and really begging to take shelter of the holy name. And when I'm doing that, I'm finding that I'm being guided throughout the day if I just listen, if I'm paying attention. And that little voice, sometimes I can magnify it just by paying attention, or it'll get louder because I am paying attention. So it really is, I feel like with japa and chanting Hare Krishna, it's like I'm voluntarily taking my hand and I'm placing it in Krishna's hand and I'm saying, you guide me, I'm following you. And when we do that and we approach the holy name like this, then we will feel more and more that guidance and inspiration.
That was really nice. I really like that point where you said when you pick up your japa bag, it's like, taking Krishna's hand and asking for his guidance. So that was really nice.
Yeah, we could
Um,
have a visualization that we're putting our head at Krishna's lotus feet, whatever
yeah.
is comfortable.
What kind of research do you do, and how long do you spend researching before beginning a book?
Well, I'm a new author, as you know, but I find in the last 2 books that I was researching for about a year. And this current one that I'm working on has been not quite that long, but I've already begun the process. I study scholarly pieces on the topic that I'm dealing with. I'll study trade paperbacks that the mass market is looking at. I will study, like the last book that I did with Bhakti Shakti, Goddess of Divine Love. I really studied the Shakta and Shaiva traditions and understood the core philosophy that they ground their concepts on. I will study as I'm reading in our acharyas, Srila Prabhupada's books. I'm constantly reading our source texts, and if they are touching, if somebody says something on the topic I'm writing about that I think would be important to bring in, I'll make a note. So it's a very thorough research by reading and thinking, and whenever I get an idea, writing it down. I take lots of notes, have many pages of notes before I'll sit down and try to write. So it's a process of hearing. I'm trying to open up and listen to what's being given to me and how it's being given so that the guidance will come through.
The analogies that you use within Wise Love, especially in terms of describing spiritual truths, are done so in such a relatable manner that even those who may not have had any exposure to bhakti previously would be able to understand key concepts to understanding the essence of bhakti. But at the same time, by sharing your own experiences and your own realizations, someone who'd already be practicing devotional service would be able to greatly benefit. Could you perhaps elaborate on who your target audience was when you started writing this book?
Sure. As I described in the beginning, I initially thought about just broad outreach. Like, I'm in America, and Srila Prabhupada told us, he said, preach to your American brothers and sisters. And what I've seen over so many years now is that the easy audience is those who are in Indian body, who have some understanding or relationship with Vedanta, Hinduism, and they resonate with our teachings, and they'll come to our temples. But Prabhupada wanted us to preach to Western bodies. So in my mind, I was trying to speak to educated Westerners, people who have Western sensibilities, which is now most of the world because of how Kali Yuga is going. We have these Western sensibilities. So I was writing for that audience. And then I realized also that what was happening is I was writing for our children that don't refer necessarily, they're not read the whole Bhagavatam, they haven't read the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita, and maybe they've studied the Gita, but then I realized, oh, well, the other thing is that for years, especially when I was a newer devotee, the first 10, 20 years, I was thinking, I just wish I had one book that would explain to my mother or my father or my sister or my colleague at work or my acquaintance here, just give them an overview of what I'm all about. What's my worldview? Why do I think of things and see things the way I do? And why am I so passionate about it? And why it's so meaningful to me. And because obviously we want to share what the meaning is for to those people.
Yeah.
So then I realized actually Wise Love is doing that. It's not completely an easy book. It's not a difficult book, but it is a concise overview of our theology and philosophy without dogma, without beating anybody over the head, but very systematically laying the groundwork of reason and logic and also Shastra, and getting people to appreciate the value of revelation, how it can be relevant and relatable. In this day, it's not just old dusty books that we're dealing with. It's current, and it has currency in today's society. So it was a broad audience. It was our own children. It was our friends and families and acquaintances. It was very clearly for the yoga community, who are having more and more interest in bhakti and are bringing bhakti segments into their yoga teacher training courses. So Wise Love is being used in yoga teacher training courses. And for instance, like preaching centers or bhakti vriksha programs, it's a ready-made teaching program because we have the book as well as the free e-course, which has been designed for individual study or group study, and you could do it at self-paced or you could do it as a weekly pace. So both the book and the course are a ready-made program to really introduce people to an understanding of bhakti and Vedanta.
Just to touch a little bit, you mentioned, the appeal to the Western or more modern culture. There were certain parallels in the book that I really liked. Like, for example, you looked at certain books and movies, and for example, you looked at The Wizard of Oz and you compared the journey back home to that of discovering, your true self. And then there was the movie The Matrix, for example, and in that you compared, you looked at the two different realities, and you compared it, the spiritual world and the material world. And so it really enhances the degree to which someone new to Bhakti can relate to these fundamental concepts. Is there anything in particular that you'd hope your readers to take away from the book?
Well, just the very, very basics of our understanding that we are a spiritual being. And I think for all the decades that I've been preaching, we would always preach, you're not the body, you're not the body. And I take up a discussion about how you're not the mind or your emotions, but you do, as a spiritual being, have mind and emotions. So that's very interesting. But, and then of course I discuss about the lackluster of mundane love and the beauty of divine love and how much it could fulfill us as spiritual beings, and how until we approach bhakti, until we come to pure love, we will never be satisfied. And then I go from there, discussing karma and different points of our philosophy, to a whole section about sacred sound and the glory of the holy name and kirtan and japa. So, and then from there we get a quick view of Hladini Shakti, Srimati Radharani, the psychology of God as Rasaraj Krishna, the supreme enjoyer and taster of Akila Rasamrita Sindhu, the taster of Ras, and how he's bought by love. So we get that, and then we have a view of a quick view of Vraja in the spiritual world, and what that means to what it means, that place, and to go to that place. And so my idea was that you establish, which is logical, you establish some basic understanding of philosophical understanding about who you are. This is the sambandha of our philosophy, who I am, what the world is, what my relationship is with the world and with God. And then how am I going to develop that relationship? It's through the holy name and through acts of devotion toward a personal God, obviously. Actually, I spend some time discussing the difference between Bhakti Vedanta and Advaita Vedanta, at least in 2 chapters, because I'm not sure how it is in Africa, but in America and Europe, North America and Europe, Advaitin and Neo-Advaitin thought rules the day. That and Buddhism has everyone's attention, and it's destroying people and their spiritual prospect. So I'm trying to really highlight the glory of bhakti here, then bring them to chanting with then, here's the possibilities that you have in transcendence, a personal relationship with God in an eternal place where there's eternal present, ever fresh. And so, I wrote with the idea that I would like to inspire people to chant Hare Krishna because, why? Because Krishna in the heart will help you from there. You just have to start, right? That's what we're trying to do. And if you likewise love, then obviously you're going to look at the Bhagavad Gita. My spiritual masters, I'm just a representative of my spiritual master, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And so if I have said something of interest, then you're going to look to my spiritual master. And what does he has? A lot of books. The translation of the Bhagavad Purana, this exceptional text, unlike any other text in the world. So like this, the idea was to attract them to chanting and really understand who they are and attract them to chanting.
So Wise Love has actually received a lot of attention. It's received a lot of prestigious awards. And could you tell us a little bit about the recognition that the book has received?
Yes, I had sent, there's different award organizations, and some of them are more reputable than others. And I had submitted Wise Love to a few organizations because I felt if it got some attention somewhere, then that could be used in marketing to get more readers, obviously. Because if you say you have an award, then people go, oh, okay, maybe it's not just, maybe it's something reasonable to look at. So I had submitted it, and it wound up getting awards in all the places I submitted. I was a little shocked, actually, because these organizations are judged by obviously by readers, the more intelligent class of people. And I had been on my own in this readers group that I was going to for 7 years every week. I had, this group had started not a national, but a statewide journal publishing fiction, nonfiction, poetry like this. So I was the managing editor of that publication for 6 years. And I was behind the scenes on what went on judging, and I just figured Wise Love wasn't going to make it through to the judges, especially because I'm not holding back. I'm giving, genuine, pure Krishna consciousness. I think I withhold saying Krishna's name for the first half of the book. I want to bring people a little bit on board before I just say Krishna. But still, it's right. Our philosophy, theology, like spot on. And I thought, well, these intellectuals in America, they're just gonna, oh, this is Hare Krishna, and we know what this is, and it's nothing. And on top of that, each one of these organizations, they get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books submitted. So I just didn't think Wise Love was going to get anything. And then it got one word, and then another word, and another word, and then in the end, it got what's known as the Montaigne Medal for 2019. And when I received that award, I just felt like tears came to my eyes, and I just thought, Krishna, you're so kind. If this can get into some people's hands, and clearly it was like a confirmation of all these years since literally 2000. 20 years ago, I had this idea of a book that could bring people, given them an overview and give them some interest in looking at chanting Prabhupada's books. And I felt like, and I wanted to do that with the more educated audience. So these are educated people, they took note, and it was just a real confirmation that the world is ripe to receive bhakti. And we just have to translate some of the things that Prabhupada has given us so that it can register, and then they can take their next step, which was just very gratifying to me to think that this might assist my spiritual master in this way. It was my prayer for crying about this for 15 years, and then Wise Love came out, and it was very, very satisfying to think that maybe somebody could be touched by what Prabhupada gave me.
I personally have to say, I really did enjoy the book. And as I mentioned earlier, they truly are so many gems within the book that you can take out and apply to your own life. There's so many realizations that you share that it just, it makes you think a bit deeper about certain aspects, and it makes you do a bit of introspection yourself. So your book is already published in the US. Can you tell us a little bit about the feedback that you've received from your readers?
Well, most people don't reach out to authors and tell them what they think about their book, but I have had a few people tell me some things. Some people have said that really it was like the best book they had seen to introduce people to Krishna consciousness. A few people have said that they finally understood bhakti, and that is an issue. Like in the US, bhakti is all a rage in the yoga community. It's all popular, but people don't know what bhakti is. And that's why in the Bhakti Campaign that I had presented to the trustees so long ago I wanted to define bhakti and make it a household word, but give the definition according to the definition we have received from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and so that it could be owned by ISKCON and the BBT, bhakti. This is what bhakti is. So that didn't happen, but so there's a lot of education that needs to go on about bhakti. People have a vague idea, well, it's devotion, it's love, but they don't really understand. It's not just devotion, it's not love, it's not ordinary love, it's not ordinary devotion. I mean, what? So you're devoted to your basketball or football and therefore you have bhakti? No, it has nothing to do with that. So people are saying, oh, now I understand bhakti, and now I'm convinced this is my path, actually. And this is the kind of feedback that I've been getting.
And from the list of reader appreciations that we've put up on screen, you can see that we can all see that there's feedback from countries where English is not even the first language. So, I mean,
Yeah.
And within your writing, are there specific themes that you return to again and again?
Well, with Wise Love, I felt that the themes were finding the self, finding ourselves, finding joy. We all want happiness, and we know that's attractive if we're shown what real happiness is and how to have real happiness. Finding love. We all want love, we want to be loved, but it's not in this plane. We have to look elsewhere. And finding home. And for me, finding home was not only just finding the self, but finding our home at Krishna's lotus feet. And both the internal geography of finding our home internally, as well as its real manifestation in the spiritual world. So those three were themes for me: finding self, finding joy, finding love, finding home. And it's a lot of people just go, yes, 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 yes. That's what I want.
So we can all learn a lot from this book, but when you wrote Wise Love, is there anything specifically that you learned on that journey of writing?
I touched on it briefly. I said I learned to hear better, to listen to the guidance that I was getting as I read, as I chanted, as I studied, as I thought about the subject, and as I prayed. I definitely feel that I got a good deepening of an understanding about prayer and just how small I am, how insignificant I am, and how unable I am to actually make an offering to my spiritual master. And so if I'm able to do anything, it's just pure and absolute causeless grace. And that is very, not only humbling, but it is, it feels like home. It feels like home to just say, I'm small, I belong to Krishna, I have no other place, and although I can't do anything, if I just beg, maybe he'll use me to do a little tiny service.
And as I understand, people use this book to teach. Could you elaborate a little bit about your free e-course that you offer?
Yes, sure. One devotee, her name is Tulsi Rani, she has a master's in education, and she wrote about 80%, maybe a little bit more, of this e-course. It took us a year to write. She was very moved by Wise Love, and she felt like this is a really powerful preaching tool. And if we can help people have an experience of bhakti, it would make it that much more powerful. So our idea was, you know how you can read something and it's like, oh, it makes sense or it doesn't make sense, and it's you have a relationship with it intellectually, but bhakti, it must have the element of heart. So we were thinking how to give people an experience of Krishna consciousness. So that's what the e-course does. It unpacks some of the more dense concepts. I think like the first chapter, the first 2 or 3 chapters, it's a lot of information and needs a little unpacking. So we're unpacking some information, and then we're giving them journaling, discussion topics, thinking, and then actual, like, now listen to a lecture, now chant some japa, now, like this, we're giving them an opportunity to explore bhakti experientially for themselves. And that's what this course does. It can be self-paced, where you can go through it really quick, or you could take it, like I have it set up showing as a 15-week course. You can go as slow or as fast as you want. There's activities for both just individuals as well as for groups.
Sounds quite exciting.
It's free, so like if you're distributing the book in Africa, they can just log on and they have a ready-made course. Or if you wanted to teach it at a center, somebody has a preaching center there, they can use the book and they've got the ready-made course. I can give them a download of it if accessing it online is less convenient. But it's completely there. There's Tulsi Rani, her picture there.
So it sounds like an amazing course, as does the book. I mean, I'm sure this would have piqued the interest in a lot of our viewers to, get a copy. Are there any other books that you have in the pipeline at the moment?
Well, as we heard, there's Bhakti Shakti, Goddess of Divine Love. That was sent to the publisher and it will be published early next year. That's a book that I had gone to what's called the Bhakti Fest here in Southern California. And I was asking people there, what does Bhakti mean? And so many people said, I don't know, I'm just here for the company and food. And some people said devotion and some people said love, but no one really understood. I think some people probably did understand Bhakti, but not very well, and most of them didn't. And the organizer of that fest, which is an annual event, quite well attended, established something called the Shakti Fest. And I knew that was well attended by women. It's centered around Durga, and it kind of touches on this in North America and Europe. There's something called a lot of women who have a little bit of leaning toward female femininity. They worship goddesses, and it's almost like their religion. And I have been watching that group of people for a few years and the dialogue going on in seminars and webinars and online. It's not a small group, it's quite a large group. And it's contrary to what I thought, it's actually quite a few very intelligent people. It's not just all touchy-feely kind of people. Anyway, so as I've been watching this group, they used to worship like goddesses, Celtic, German, Roman, and then Durga came onto the scene in a big way about going on 10 years ago. And there's a lot of books that have been released about Durga Ma for a Western audience. They like that there's a philosophy attached with this goddess. And they've written some things about Srimati Radharani that are horrendous, in my opinion. And I wanted to give this group, which I did write the book for them, but it is also for men and a broader audience, and I think it will find a broader audience. But I wanted to give an understanding of the Supreme Goddess, the source of Durga, and what options are. And so it actually ties into Wise Love quite well. And it, again, speaks to the theme of we're not the body, and how would we worship Goddess, and how we worship Goddess Radha through chanting the holy name. In fact, I do have a nice chapter on Durga, but I have a beautiful chapter on Radha. And the last chapter is Shakti and Shaktiman become one in love. And that is about Lord Chaitanya, and the book ends on a overview of the Shikshashtaka and the potential that we have by worshipping Srimati Radharani through chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
Sounds like another really powerful book, actually.
We'll see. I have another book in mind, but I haven't started writing it, so I can't tell you.
Okay. We have some questions from our viewers. So the first one is, what advice do you have for aspiring writers?
Read books on writing, read and read and read any writing, and start paying attention to how people write. What do they use to express their ideas? And then practice, 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 practice. If you can take classes, take classes. I actually found that the most powerful thing for me was attending the writers group once a week, where we would sit down, and if you had a piece that you had written, there was about anywhere from 7 to 20 people in attendance, and you would bring your piece on a piece, copies printed out, and you would hand out that copy. Then you would read your piece out loud. Everyone just listened quiet. Then everyone goes quiet, and everyone wrote their comments on your piece. And then when everyone was finished writing their comments, they would give you verbal feedback, and you couldn't say anything. You just had to hear and listen to what the reader's comments were and the critique. And it's not always fun, but it's good. So I found that writing and getting reader feedback was the most powerful. And then I started realizing, okay, I think this is good writing. Like, I don't consider myself, I'm not a literary artist. I'm not a great writer. Like, some writers are just amazing. But I was at least able to learn how to communicate ideas clearly. And there's nothing short, as with anything, of practice, and then being open to critique, and being open to rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. I think I rewrote Wise Love no less than 100 times. Some chapters.
Oh, that's real dedication. But that was really quite insightful, I must say, as an aspiring writer myself. I really did appreciate that. There's another question. The cover of Wise Love is eye-catching. Did you design the cover?
I had something to do with it. I hired this devotee. Her name is Raghunandini, and she is a second generation. She's the daughter of one of my friends here. And she worked with BBT, the Eastern European division in Sweden with Rama Muhurta. She was a designer there. She's married to Govinda, who's also a designer. So I hired her to do the cover, and I had given her ideas, and I just thought I wanted to do something different so that it would be eye-catching, because so many people see book covers this big on their screen, and to get their attention, it has to be quick, it has to be instantaneous. So I had seen an old cover from decades ago with a vertical line in it, and that's not common, but it's interesting. And because if you see on the cover, those are moons, those white globes, those are moons. I had a vision when I sat down to write Wise Love that I would discuss consciousness, and I would discuss it in such a way that it would be like a moon getting fuller and fuller and fuller and fuller in the sky until you had the full orb of consciousness, where you saw Krishna and Radha and you yourself and the whole spiritual sky, and you saw your path there. You saw Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana. You saw it all. It was manifesting like a full moon. So she took that imagery, and that was the moon. And then I liked the colors because you have the earthy kind of rusty colors, and then you have the bluish, which are more like spiritual. So it's like I'm trying to say we're dealing here with matter and spirit, and we're dealing with consciousness rising to its full potential and understanding.
So it sounds like the cover itself has got so much of depth just in the design itself. That's amazing. So someone asked, your book is in English. Will it be translated into other languages?
Well, anybody who wants to translate it is welcome to translate it. There is someone translated into Spanish, and one devotee would like to translate it into Bulgaria, but he is busy himself and he's trying to find a translator, and that's taking time. So there's nothing else that I know of in the works.
Okay. Someone says, I really like the idea of of bridge books. Are there more books such as Wise Love? What books are easier to distribute to people who don't know about Krishna consciousness?
There are There are some books. I know the BBT actually came out with one on yoga. I'm sorry, I cannot remember the name right now. We should look that up, and maybe whoever asked that question, we can give them an answer. I know Vaisheshika is working on a book on kirtan right now. I know of a book that I personally like very much, but I would have to be cautious about recommending it because it's not written by somebody. It's a Gaudiya Vaishnava, but someone's not in the ISKCON circle, so I'm not sure if that would be welcome here. There's not a lot of books. That's why we need more books like this. And the BBT has an opportunity to publish more books. And if anyone has ideas on bridge books, they should present their ideas to the BBT. Maybe it's something that they could offer as a service, because there is no, I mean, books are so important. They have long life. They're our family business, so to speak. And there can never be too many books. That said, I'm trying to think of other books out there, and we need more. We need more. We have a lot of, as devotees, as Prabhupada's disciples and grand disciples, we have a lot of work to do. And we're lucky.
I think there was a lot of interest in this. So someone says, your book sounds incredible. How do we obtain a copy of Wise Love? And would you suggest we give this book to someone who does not have much experience with Bhakti Yoga?
Yes, to the last question, yes. This is really an ideal book for outreach. And we can thank Mathura Mandala and Govardhan Prabhus for seeing the potential with Wise Love. They're going to be publishing that. It's going to be available in Africa fairly soon. We have to ask them when. That based on the pandemic, things are a little tenuous at times. To receive a copy immediately, it's on Amazon, but it should be in your own country if you are in Africa pretty soon.
We have a really nice comment here that I want to read out. It says, Hare Krishna, Mataji, you are truly inspiring. Your commitment to Srila Prabhupada is evident in your literary preaching to Western communities. Your presentation and translation of divine love and the relatability for the ordinary appeal in generating curiosity for a higher love. Can't wait to read. Just to say thank you and congratulations on all the awards.
Oh, thank you. Very sweet.
So, Pranada Prabhu, it's been an absolute privilege and such a pleasure to speak to you today. Thank you so much for joining us on our 11th annual conference. And just wanted to say thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for welcoming Wise Love, allowing my service to Srila Prabhupada to go a little further into more people's hands.
Hare Krishna. And thank you to all of our viewers today. We hope you stay tuned for our next session, which will be at 6 o'clock Central African time. And our next speaker will be His Holiness Giriraj Swami, and his topic is on books are the basis. So we hope to see you then. Hare Krishna.